Okay, it's on. So whenever it's 7 o'clock, you can start the meeting.
How come Joyce can't see us?
Joyce should be able to see you.
Joyce, can you see us? I don't see her in the panel. Let me see.
I could promote her panelist. Maybe that'll make.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yep, here it is. All right.
So they've their footprint. Hopefully have it completely gone and
Joyce is not on.
I can see you. I'm on. I can see you. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. I can
Good
see you.
evening.
I'm fine.
Excellent.
Okay.
has reached out to the state, and I believe that they are.
Okay, I'm leaving.
All right. Thanks, Jose.
Thank you.
So we gotta wait 2 minutes.
So do we have David Liupa joining us?
David's here.
He's just muted. There you go.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, good.
And
So we
Barry
have-
as well.
We have a quorum. That's good.
Yeah. And Joy's supposed to be here too. How you doing, Barry? You're muted, Barry.
There you go. Seat of honor next to chairman.
There we go.
How are
Hey,
you?
Kate.
But just out of curiosity, does the town have any plans for reopening the town hall so we can be meeting in chambers as opposed to virtually here?
I don't want to go out tonight.
Yeah, I have not heard of any change. I'm guessing it's not going to happen before most of us get a shot or two.
Hi, Joy. You're muted, Joy.
Still on mute.
Do we have our applicants?
Yeah, we do.
Peter Malley should be there. Maybe George Logan and Frank Borowski.
Not Frank. George is here. All right. So I guess we can start the meeting.
7 o'clock.
Uh,
I think Peter and Alan, I think there's a few hands raised during the attendee.
Yeah, I'll bring them in when after I call the meeting order. Inland Wetlands and Watercourse meeting for February 16th, 2021 is called to order. In attendance is Kevin Wilcox, David Liupa, Kevin Hussein, Joy Chance, Katie Blint, Barry Burson, Peter Castalia, and myself. Let's see, our first applicant. Let's bring David in. David, there? Yep. Nope. Oh, they are. Who else do we need to bring in for your applicant? David.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, now I can.
Oh. Okay, the first application will be presented by myself and Rachel Mayer. I don't see her on the screen.
Rachel, yeah.
And we need to reopen the public hearing.
Yep, just want to get everybody on it. So just yourself and Rachel. Okay.
As the main presenters, correct?
Is there a motion to remove application number 1 for corporate crossing from the table?
So moved.
Who made the
That was
motion?
Barry.
Yep.
Barry made the motion,
Yes, sir.
seconded by
Second.
Kevin Wilcox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. So. Public hearing. So we're going to try something new tonight, Attorney Barham. We're going to limit you to an hour. At the end of the hour, we'll see where we are and how much more we got to do. We're trying to get a hold of the time constraints. And just as a reminder to the applicants and all the others that are listening, we are just, Wetlands Commission is just concerned with wetlands issues. We are not concerned with who likes this project, doesn't like this project, where the project has been in the past, and so forth. So just keep it to wetlands issues, please. All right. So Peter, where are we?
Well, at the last meeting, the applicants made a fairly detailed presentation, although with the understanding that they would probably have to do it again tonight. There were a few questions and some concerns raised, and I'm sure the applicant has or wants to address those. In particular, they sent us a couple of written responses to the questions and to some of the other issues that were brought up, and those were included in your packet along with a revised set of plans. So everybody should be looking at the most up-to-date plans.
And David and Kevin were saying you weren't here last time, but you had read the memo and you're up to par?
Yes, yep.
Yep.
So looking
Alan, can you mute Barry? Feedback, I think.
Wait, what? How's that? Where do we
Yeah,
put feedback?
It must be somebody else. We're getting feedback.
Sorry, Barry.
I'm hearing something sounds like a radio.
That's it. It was Joyce.
Okay.
Okay.
Or maybe not Joyce. Sorry, Joyce. I don't mean to cast aspersions.
Definitely not me.
Oh. All righty. So Attorney Barham, do you want to fill us in on where?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to make a brief presentation, and I think we'll be well within your hour rule. So our goal tonight is not to repeat the testimony that was presented to your commission at the last hearing, but really to just highlight some of the key provisions and also to address your wetlands agent's memorandum that was filed, that we went over carefully, took seriously, and actually made a number of changes that we were able to implement that we want to present to you this evening. One of those changes that I want to mention from the beginning is on page 13 of Peter's memorandum. He actually, page 12, he mentioned the idea of a conservation easement. And we were not sure at the last hearing whether we could accomplish that because there are some challenges in as much as there's an MDC easement that traverses the property, and there may be another easement as well. But we went back and we took another look, and we are now confident that we can provide a conservation easement to encompass Philly Brook and the undeveloped portion of the parcel. And we believe that will be about 8 acres, less any area that is comprised of the MDC easement or any other easements that we find, unless we can convince those parties to become part of the conservation easement. But should the commission approve this application this evening, we consent to a condition being a conservation easement, and I would hope that you would afford us some flexibility to work with staff to identify the boundaries of that easement and the language that is suitable to your staff. So we feel that will further enhance and protect, again, the undeveloped areas and the habitat and wetlands that traverse this site. This is an exciting project for us and for those in staff and other groups that have viewed it. But as pertains to your commission, we believe that we have complied with your regulations and that we have adopted the most feasible and prudent assurances on this site so that we protect the wetlands, we protect the watercourse, and we protect the habitat. And in fact, when I address you at the end of the presentation to talk about the criteria for approval, we will emphasize again that our mitigation efforts are extraordinary and actually surpass the existing wetlands areas that are being impacted. So with that brief introduction, I would like to introduce Rachel Meyer, who is the senior landscaper for Design Professionals. And just to let you know that the other 3 members of our team that you met at the last hearing, Jim McManus, our certified professional soil scientist, Peter Damali, the president of Design Professionals and urban planner, and the principal in charge of the project, and Daniel Jameson, our professional licensed engineer, will be available to answer any questions you have. So with that brief introduction, let me turn it over to Rachel.
Thank you, David. Good evening, Commission. Is everyone able to hear me well?
Yep.
Okay, great. So as David said, I just want to reiterate, my name is Rachel Meyer, Senior Landscape Designer with Design Professionals. I wanted to provide a brief summary of the plan and letters that you received, as Peter Castaldi mentioned, since we last met in January, to accommodate the questions and concerns that we heard from you all. So just what you see on the screen is our visual exhibit that we provided to orient you all again. But I will switch to a specific plan to highlight the areas where we have made changes. So that for you. So as a general overview, we have reduced 2,645 square feet of direct wetland impact from over the 16,600 square feet before to 13,980 square feet. That is a 15.9% reduction in the direct wetlands impacts. And that also provides related reductions to the upland review area disturbance and vegetated buffer disturbance. So these overall plans that you're looking at on the left-hand side is the plan sheet that you saw back in January. And the right-hand side is what you should have received in February on our C-SP1 sheets, our overall site plans. So the right-hand side, as I said, is what pertains directly to the revisions made since January. So our main goal for the revision, as David mentioned, is to further reduce the effect of the development on the existing habitats on site, as well as Philly Brook itself. One area of concern last month was the residential portion of the site as it affects the wetlands, particularly the southern parking lot. Hopefully you can see my cursor highlighting the red clouded area on this part of the site. So we removed 15 parking spaces, the entire row of parking spaces on the eastern side of that parking lot. This provided for an additional 18 feet of distance between the retaining wall that is required for grading purposes and Philly Brook itself. This change eliminated 1,292 square feet of direct wetlands impact. So you can see on the old plans, we were encroaching quite a bit and were able to completely remove this disturbance. We know that was a great concern and we wanted to prioritize the relocation of those parking spaces as necessary. On top of that, throughout the entire residential development in general, we removed a total of 18 parking spaces due to the site's access to public transportation. We were able to reduce the amount of surface parking, still maintaining compliance to reduce the impervious coverage on that portion of the site by approximately 3,000 square feet. We know impervious coverage was part of Peter Castaldi's memo as well, so we wanted to make sure we accounted for both of those. The second major layout change, also as recommended by Peter Castaldi's memo, is addition of a retaining wall on the office side of the development. So this main red clouded area east of Philly Brook. So this wall allowed for us to remove an additional 787 square feet of direct wetlands impact close to the eastern bank of the brook. So the entire pocket that we were disturbing before in this area has been saved. So we are able to add that wall here and accomplish that as well. The remaining 566 square feet of impact reduction occurred in a few spaces in a smaller amount, but still important. The eroded ditches where we have our new residential road crossing that we have since channelized, we were able to refine the grading and rip-wrap aprons in this area to cause a little bit less wetlands disturbance while still improving the water quality that moves from west to east into Philly Brook in the wetlands area, as well as refined grading in our compensatory floodplain storage area. So where you can see these two small pockets of wetlands, we were able to reduce the wetlands impacts in those areas, not completely eliminate it, to ensure that we still had proper water movement in the floodplain storage area. But those collective sites have reduced our wetlands impact, like I said, almost 16%. So we would also like to acknowledge a note in Peter Castaldi's memo that we need to revise the grading in our floodplain compensatory storage area. So again, outlining this red clouded area in the northeast corner of the site to ensure that we do not have any 3-to-1 slopes in the side yard setback. We are happy to accommodate that as again, a condition of approval working with town staff. We will provide revised grading plans to ensure that no steep slopes are impacting the side yard setbacks in this area. As David mentioned, the applicant is absolutely willing to accommodate the conservation easement to run through the site. Mentioned we have the sanitary sewer trunk line easement that runs through this site, but there is still a very significant amount of mature woodland that can be protected and preserved. It will also be able to adjoin. There is another conservation easement to a property east of this that it will join with and provide a lot more continuity for habitat in the neighborhood overall. As our response letters have stated, and Peter Castaldi concurred in his memo, to answer your questions overall, this revised proposal will not impede the existing functions of the farm pond on site over on the western side, or the vernal pools in the area, in the surrounding area, nor will it increase the velocity of Philly Brook or alter its relationship with downstream properties. Another final note is that our ENS erosion and sedimentation control sheets and the plan sets you received recently provide 4 construction phases in order to limit the amount of exposed soil at a single time and stabilize the wetlands as early as possible in this process. Our project engineer has also reinforced our erosion and sedimentation control plan with additional dewatering stations and erosion control matting to protect steep slopes as recommended. With that, I will conclude my plan remarks. Thank you all for your time. I will send it back to David to give his summary, and we appreciate you and have any more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Again, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I would like to do is talk about the criteria for considerations and just review with you some of the things that were done to look at feasible and prudent alternatives. The first thing that I think you should recognize is that the new office building that we're proposing was actually approved in 1989 as indicated in Peter's memorandum. But the building that we're putting in now is much smaller in footprint and much less of an impact. And that was designed intentionally to avoid as much interruption and impact to the wetlands. So we did carefully plan that. And I should say, as I mentioned last time, for 2 years, Peter Damali and myself and other members of the team have worked closely with your staff, and the various iterations of this plan have evolved dramatically so that we tried to design and place the improvements to the site in the less harmful areas and as suggested by your staff. But this office building is a great reduction from what we had before. We have also reduced the surface parking, as you heard from Rachel. We eliminated 18 spaces, 15 in that parking row. So there is more distance between Philly Brook and the buildings and the impervious pavement site. And we think that that was an attempt to try and address some of the concerns addressed by this commission and by Peter Castaldi. We, in addition, put in the retaining walls that Rachel spoke about, which eliminated additional impact to wetland areas. And as I indicated with the mitigation efforts, according to our calculations, we have about 0.2 acres increase in protected wetland habitat. In addition to that, we have less impervious space than we had in either of the prior plans. We've eliminated the wetlands pocket at the beginning of the drive off of Cottage Grove Road. We've reduced the impact to the wetlands by the office space. We've met your requirement of 1.5 to 1 in mitigation. And we have, as Rachel pointed out, actually reduced the direct wetlands impact by 16,624 square. Well, that was the old one. We reduced it, I'm sorry, by 22,645 square feet. So we have done everything conceivable and possible to try and address your concerns and reduce any direct impact and any impervious space as best we could. We also, as part of this application, met with the fire marshal, and we were able to eliminate emergency crossings that would have impacted the wetlands, brought about mostly because of our 2 separate driveways. We designed the apartment units so that the garages also were installed to reduce surface parking. We reduced the length of the cul-de-sac going to the wetlands to the north And this was reduced fairly significantly, where we were able to remove the cul-de-sac from the wetlands area. We worked with staff to have the development pulled as far from the wetlands to the west as possible. And we also determined with staff that there were no vernal pools on our site. And in our supplemental report, we also indicated to staff that the vernal pools that were detected off-site by Jolly Drive will not be impacted by our site, which tends to flow in an east-west direction away from Jolly Drive. In terms of the vegetative buffers, Rachel indicated at the last hearing all the various species that we're planning to put into place, and how we're going to try and replace invasive species that have no value and are more of an annoyance with typical natural wetland species to take their place. So we hope that with the existing wetlands that we will actually be improving them and making them more viable. In looking at the area where there have to be some deforestation taking place, I'd like to point out a couple of things. If you look at the farmland to the west of the site, it has already been cleared. It has been excavated. Staff and our wetlands specialists have found fill piles on the site. You have the sanitary, MDC sanitary sewer that traverses the site. And our wetlands agent indicated that it's not a pristine wetlands environment. So we believe that with the enhancements that we are making, that it will become much more pristine and much more viable than currently exists. And we hope that our plantings, and we're certainly willing to work with staff if there's anything that they would prefer than what has been recommended in our plans. We are very flexible and open to working with them. We have also, as I indicated at the opening of the presentation, agreed to the conservation easement, which we will work with staff, and we believe that will protect almost 8 acres worth of undeveloped and important habitat. When you look at the criteria and I look at Peter's memorandum, which begins on page 7, I believe that with the improvements that we have offered this evening, that we address many of the issues that he has raised. The development was always conceived as a mixed-use development, and because of the zoning hearings that we had, we were able to divide the site, as you may recall, into a planned luxury residential and a professional office site. And the two are extremely compatible, not only with the town's goals of development, but we believe, again, meet your regulations and protect the habitat and the environment. So when you go through the criteria for decision, we believe that the environmental impact is negligible and is offset by the mitigation efforts that we are proposing, which again is a net plus over what we currently have. In terms of feasible alternatives, I've described to you all the many things that we've done and others that I'm not even mentioning that were agreed to through 2 years of staff meetings, making some fine tuning to different aspects of the project. In terms of long-term and short-term impact, our soil scientist at the end of his report indicated that there were no short-term or long-term impacts, that we are taking all precautions that are required during the construction period, and that we are implementing features of the design that Rachel reviewed with you that will protect the wetlands and the habitat. In terms of character and degree of injury, I just point to Peter's comments that there is no injury to the safety, health, and reasonable use of the property. And in terms of regulated areas outside, we did look at the vernal pools by Jolly Drive, and it was determined that there are no impacts to any of those areas. So when you look at the criteria for consideration, again, we feel that we have met the regulations. We have attempted to implement all the recommendations made by staff. We took your comments seriously and went back and reviewed the plans and revised them. And obviously, we read very thoroughly several times Peter's memorandum, and we again tried to address, some of the key concerns that he had. So with that, I would like to, offer that if you have any questions, the 5 consultants and team members assembled this evening are all here to answer your most technical questions to your more general questions.
Okay, before we move that, Peter, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I do. I think it's important for the commission members who were not here last time to back up a little bit and see where the basic, where are the wetland impacts, and to understand, in a general sense, what these regulated activities are. I don't know if Rachel wants to review that, or if she wants me to, I can do it if she can put her map back up.
You can do it briefly. If you don't mind just holding one moment, I will pull up our site plan that shows the specific areas a little better.
Is that sheet SP2, CSP2?
Correct.
Okay.
Can you make it a little larger,
Absolutely.
please?
So I will zoom in close and start from the southern portion of the site and move northward, just to orient everybody where the existing medical office building is, on the southeastern corner over here. So you will see a diagonal dashed line is where we have direct wetlands impacts. So starting in the residential development on the western side, for those that were not here, 2 20-unit apartment buildings. We have 3 small pockets, 1, 2, and 3, particularly for pipe crossings to ensure that water moving from the west of the site is properly crossing underneath our new driveway entrance and entering the wetlands through some water quality units. Sticking to the wetlands or the, residential side, just to provide some clarity, moving north through our entrance drive that accesses both of the apartment buildings. We have some more wetlands disturbance here. Our wetlands agent has described these 2 areas as eroded ditches over time that water has continued to flow through. So we are channelizing those underneath our access drive. Again, these will have water quality units and will be improving the quality of the water that is moving from east to west, as it will contain a lot more of the sedimentation that was coming in from the farmland before. So that is it for the residential side. Again, where we were discussing earlier, we used to have some in the north, but we no longer do. So we will move back over to the office side of the development, which is east of Phillybrook. So the largest portion of wetlands impacts on this site is this large pocket here. It's a little over 9,000 square feet of disturbance, which is the majority of the proposed disturbance now, the almost 14,000 acres. So it's over half. There is a small impact here due to parking and grading. And then, as mentioned, there is some disturbance to the small wetland fingers that peak our floodplain compensatory storage and wetland mitigation area. There is a large pocket to the east here that we have completely protected. And to note, all of the areas on this plan, which is again sheet C-SP2, these triangles are wetlands enhancement areas that run all along our limit of disturbance along the wetlands to provide invasive clearing and more native vegetation plantings.
Yeah, I would add that the flow in the water course is from north to south. And the big shaded area on the plan is the floodway, not the FEMA flood zone, but that's the floodway. And because there's some impacts to the floodway and the flood zone, they have to do this compensating flood compensation area. And except for the two little fingers, as you mentioned, there's this area is going to be in the upland review area. It's not a wetland impact, but it's an upland review area impact. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear as to what the actual impacts are. And I think that the applicant has done a pretty good job of addressing the requirements of the regulations, as well as addressing some of the, or most, I should say, of the questions that were brought up by the commission and by my staff report. I did see that there was an offer for a conservation easement, which I think is a good idea. There is an existing one on part of Phillybrook to the northeast, and property to the northeast, and that if that is that's something that the commission would consider accepting, they can accept the conservation easement or request a conservation restriction, which is a little bit different than an easement. But typically, if we do accept a conservation easement, we ask that the easement corners be marked in the field and that there be some kind of warning you're walking into a conservation easement sign or signs erected. I think the language in that standard comment would be every 1 to 200 feet or every 2 to 300 feet and at likely points of entrance. So I think the conservation easement is a good idea. And I would recommend that the commission add a condition of approval that outlines the requirements for marking the thing in the field, both with corner pins and warning signs. I do believe that the applicant has provided the commission with sufficient information to make an informed decision on this project, and I have recommended a bunch of conditions. Most of them are our typical requirements for filing of maps on the land records, filing of the permit on the land records, a bond, restoration and wetland bond. But I put in an extra 0 in that amount. In
Hey, you put it in there.
I was gonna wait to see if David picked that up, but I was gonna bring it up.
I
It should
wasn't
be-
gonna say anything.
Yeah, it should be, per our regulations, it's $1,000 per acre. They've got about 7 acres of disturbance, so it would be 7,000, not 70,000. But if I could bring the commission's attention to some of the conditions on page 4, the way that the project is phased is going to be important. And I think that the major excavations, which are going to be the floodplain compensation area and the stormwater management basin, should be done first. If the floodplain compensation area is not built in the first part of the project, then when the time comes to build it, they're going to have to figure out a way to get past the stormwater management basin. So it makes sense from my point of view to do those things first and be able to then the project can be completed or can move along from the furthest in part or the farthest to the north, and then work your way out. This is for the office part only. I believe the floodplain compensation area is required for the residential development, not for the office development. So there's a little bit of cross requirements here for the overall project. And I think that it's good to have phases in the project so you can limit the amount of exposed ground. And certainly the compensation area could be one phase by itself. The office building and the stormwater basin could be another phase. And then the residential, the apartments could be one whole phase, or those could be built in 2 phases as well. So there's a lot of opportunity here to keep the amount of ground disturbance down. But I believe on their plan, they show that the floodplain compensation area would be in phase 2, and I think it should be in phase 1. And I also have, let's see, I think I'm recommending that the mitigation areas be constructed during the first construction season, assuming that it's not starting in the wintertime, and under the supervision of a wetland scientist and monitored for 3 years. I've also included a requirement for annual stormwater reports, which is another standard requirement for the last several years, I guess. But the last one, number 21, calls for an integrated pest management / landscape maintenance program. Shall be prepared for all parts of the development and implemented by the property owners after the construction phase is completed, or when the responsibility for post-construction management of the property is transferred. And I think that kind of looks back at number 19, 2 above it, where the wetlands regulation, or wetlands permits, I should say, are issued not to the property owner, and they don't go with the property, that they are typically they are issued or assigned to the applicant or to wherever the applicant would like to be. So at this point, the recommendation is for the applicant property owner, Corporate Crossing Limited Partnership, to be the permittee. And if the different parts of the project come under separate ownership, unless the permit is transferred by the commission, Corporate Crossing Limited Partnership will be responsible for for all of the wetlands permit. So I could see somewhere down the line, if the apartment side of the project was sold to a different entity, there's going to be the need either for a separate permit altogether, or somehow we have to be able to separate the two parts. And I'm a little unclear how that would be. In other cases we've had where the property owner or the property owner's agent has come in and gotten approval for the permit, and then the project in total is sold to the entity that ends up building whatever they're proposing to build. And then in that case, the requirements of the permit either stay with the original permittee, or they are transferred to the new developer. So I'm not sure exactly how that plays into to this permit. I think in this case, they're asking for a permit for the entire project, not for parts. And then I have, I think, covered most of my staff hearing information. I'm sorry, staff report information. As far as the public hearing goes, the meeting, this public hearing has been open now for 28 days since January 19th. And if the public hearing is continued, it would be continued to the March 15th meeting and be extended by 20 days. More, it would be extended by an additional 20 days. So the commission can has 35 days to extend the public hearing. The public hearing was extended last month. Now it's been open for 28 days at the March 15th meeting. It would have been open for 55 days, but that's only a 20-day extension.
All right. Are there any questions from the public? Is there any public care for this? You have to raise your hand. I don't see any. Okay. Any questions from the commission?
I have a few.
Okay. Go ahead, David.
Okay. So I'm concerned about this riparian corridor being impacted by the project. So I had a few questions. One of the responses to Peter's question about the impacts of the vernal pool, the response talked about just the site drainage not directly impacting the vernal pool, but in our wetland regulations, the 500-foot buffer around the vernal pool is a regulated resource, not just the vernal pool itself. We have a note in Peter's notes on page 6 at the bottom of the page that the 500-foot habitat zone extends onto the subject property by about 100 feet. So in my mind, if the 500-foot habitat zone around the vernal pool is a regulated resource as defined in our wetland regulations, then any activities within that 100 feet is a direct impact to a regulated area. So are there any proposed activities in that buffer area, that 500-foot buffer?
You guys want me to answer?
Somebody should.
I mean, I don't believe so, but let me just ask if Rachel or Daniel Jameson are available to give a technical reply to that.
I can clarify. I'm sorry, I wasn't quick to unmute. I was trying to pull up one of our other plans that shows the locations of those vernal pools. Now that I lost it again, I apologize.
No problem.
Yeah, what I was going to say is that there are some along the easterly part of the property, but those regulated activities within 500 feet are also within 200 feet of the brook on the other side.
Right, but the 500-foot habitat zone is a regulated resource as opposed to our upland review area, which is viewed in a different way, I guess, that it's an upland review area versus an actual resource. So my thought is that if there's activities within the regulated resource, then that should be figured into the impact calculations.
So we can clarify. So these are the vernal pools to the east of Jolly Drive. There are 3. There is an additional one that is further north of the site that does not reach our impacted area. I believe the 500-foot offset would reach into this portion. However, as we stated, this area here is our floodplain compensatory storage area. From the property line to the west is all sloping down. We have graded everything to capture any stormwater that falls on our site, and our professional engineer is here as well. He can definitely go into that in a bit more detail, but all of the impacts in this area will not leave our site towards the vernal pools on the eastern side.
Right, well, you're just talking about site drainage, though. The 500-foot habitat area is identified as a critical habitat. So there's potential that there are, nesting and feeding areas within that 500-foot buffer. So I guess my point is that ground disturbing activities within that zone is an impact to the regulated resource. So the vernal pool itself is just the envelope. The 500-foot area around the vernal pool is the habitat area, which is covered under our wetland regulations.
Understood. And maybe I can clarify a little bit better. I apologize if I was not clear off the forefront. This area will also act as our wetlands mitigation. So any of the vegetation removal required to construct the compensatory storage will be replanted with native water-friendly species. This is I believe over 20,000 square feet of area, and will be included in that conservation easement area as Peter's memo requires or defines, to include the mitigation and enhancement areas. So that will be able to re-enter a native vegetative state over time. So any temporary impacts by clearing the vegetation will be rewilded over time and return to, as we've said, an enhanced native environment compared to the vegetation that exists there now.
Are the soils going to be? I'm assuming there's going to be lowering of the grading for that mitigation. Are the soils going to be replaced? Or are they going to be left alone, just lowered in elevation? I guess because the point of the habitat is that the species that may be nesting there or feeding there rely on the soils and the vegetation that exists now. So are the soils going to be replaced or removed, or what's the plan there?
Actually, we have Jim McManus. I'm not sure if Peter Castaldi or Alan, you have ability to see if Jim McManus is on with us. He is our wetland soil scientist. He can speak a little bit more to the impacts to the soils and if he is available to be brought in.
Alan, that would be you.
Yes, I know. I'm trying to bring him in. I had to switch.
Thank you. Sorry for that. We didn't realize from the bat that he was in, but I will leave this up in mute so Jim can give some background on the soils and vegetation.
While we're waiting for Jim to get online, if I'm correctly interpreting the map that Rachel has on the screen, the two vernal pool areas appear to be east of Jolly Drive. So you would know better than myself, being more expertise in the technicalities of the wetlands, but it appears that you've got this roadway that is next to the vernal pools. That's sort of a divide between them and any 500-foot buffer. It sort of divides it.
Right.
It seems to me that might be a circumstance to consider as well, that there's a man-made infrastructure there
Right.
that is
The-
separating it.
Right, yeah, and so studies have been done on the movement of vernal pool species. And when it's a major arterial road, those are considered to be obstructions. But when it's a minor secondary or lower road, then some species still will traverse it to get to their habitat and feeding area. So I mean, it could very well be an interception point, but it may not be. And that's, we can't determine that without studying it. I mean, I can move forward with my questions.
Yeah, stand by.
Okay. Peter, in a previous application, we had, I thought we had a vernal pool that was identified also just north of Cottage Grove Road. That was a very recent application. It's not shown on the map though. It's just on the north side of Cottage Grove Road, next to the adjacent property. Just keep scrolling down. So if you move the hand down to the right, all the way to the right. Yeah, right down and to the left a little bit. Just a little more right there. Didn't we recently had an application for that existing building to do some work, and I thought there was a vernal pool that had been identified there.
I think it's on the other side of the road from where the hand was at 10 Jolly Drive.
No,
So-
I think he's meaning even further to the east. That was last year or maybe the year before we had.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Yeah,
That is,
Yeah, and
that is,
they've
yeah,
already
that's
done
right.
all that work.
Yeah, you're right. That was right next to the railroad tracks. Yep. Okay, so that was further east. So that would be probably pretty far, well, on the north side of the road and west of the tracks. Right there, yeah.
In the meantime, as we're bringing in Mr. McCann, I think Rachel mentioned that only she mentioned a compensatory area, but if based on David's question, that 500 offset would even pass that compensatory or into the paved parking area too. But David, would that be a concern too, you're saying, for you, if it's within that 100 foot, not only the area that they've highlighted to have, including the paved area too, correct?
Right, and well, and I don't know exactly where the radius is, but any ground disturbing activity within that 500 foot, whether it's for the, whether it's to make it more natural or to make it paved, is an impact to the habitat area.
What is that radius you have right now there, Rachel, showing right now, if you just zoom in right here?
So I will clarify. Sorry, hold on, Peter. Sorry about that. So this old exhibit does have, or does not include these vernal pools. So let me actually get you back to this plan. I think it shows it a little bit better. Sorry, we opened a few things. So
Yeah,
what we have provided is 100 feet from the wetlands and 200 feet from the water courses for the upland review area. That includes all of the site located wetlands and water courses. So this semi-dash line that you see covering here. You can tell this small dashed line is the 500-foot buffer for off-site vernal pools. So those three over here, which will collectively hit our property line. We did not incorporate them into ours. Actually, you can see.
I don't think we're seeing what you're pointing at.
Right. So once we created the 500-foot offset from the vernal pools, it was incorporated into all of the other upland review area limits. So this very light dashed line that you see.
Can you put it back to the plans, or we can't see what you're talking about? At least I can't.
No, I don't see.
I'm sorry. Did this jump screens? I apologize. I didn't realize that it got pulled.
Yeah, we're seeing
Okay.
site plan.
How's that?
Yeah.
I
That's better.
apologize. Thank you. Sorry, that was a little technical glitch. So I'll just rewind. So this light dashed line is the offsite wetlands and vernal pools boundary. That's the upland review area from those. So they were incorporated together. We worked with Peter Castaldi to show that correctly by incorporating them. So it's hard to tell exactly where the 500-foot is by itself, but you can see that there are upland review areas from offsite features that do reach pretty far into even where the existing site is now.
No, but what I'm saying, so if you look at your offset, your 100-foot offset, it's probably just about 125% of the width of Jolly Drive, right? I'm just approximating right now. And if you do that with the vernal pools, it looks like that 100-foot, it will be within the 500 feet, but not within the 100-foot, David, right? You're concerned of anything within 500.
Right, because like I said earlier, the 500-foot area around a vernal pool is not the same as an upland review area. The upland review area itself is not a regulated resource. It's a review area around a regulated resource. But the 500-foot area around a vernal pool is a regulated resource. So if you equate it to a wetland, the 500 feet around the vernal pool would be like your wetland boundary, basically. So it's not just the pocket of the wetland, it's the habitat area around it, as defined in our wetland regulations.
Again, I would just point out that you have this divide with Jolly Drive. And remember, we've had significant development with the apartments at the end of Jolly Drive. So I don't know what the definition is, as David indicated, between a major and a minor road. But clearly the traffic on Jolly Drive will be significantly enhanced once those apartments are constructed.
Okay. Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse, so we can move on. I think the point was made here. So I do have I have some questions that probably Jim McManus would best answer.
I'm trying to get him in, but it doesn't allow me to put him in.
Alan, I have him on the phone. I'm going to try to see if you guys can hear him when he talks on speaker. It might not be perfect, but it might be better than what we have.
Okay.
So let me know if you can hear him.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. David, as it related to the vernal pools, as you recall, I wouldn't call Jolly Drive Cottage Grove, but I wouldn't call it a quiet little street either. And we have major development. I did the wetlands on 10 Jolly Drive, and I could tell you that all those are disturbed back there, so we don't have anything pristine. Now, as it relates to the 500-foot coming into our mitigation area, we are going to excavate down to where we need to be to satisfy the compensation, and that, of course, will be backdressed with a topsoil so we can have vegetative growth. But other than that, the area we will be left alone and able to be utilized, and over time, that vegetation will fill in and do what it needs to do.
Okay, all right. All right, I'll move on to my next question. I had a question about the wetland soils. Are these all floodplain soils, or is there a mix of hydrics as well?
The mix of hydric.
Okay.
The only floodplain soils that are associated with Philly Brook, anything else that's outside of the Philly Brook, for instance, where we're actually filling some wetlands for a parking lot, that's just a poorly drained mineral soil. The soils that are in the eroded ditches on the apartment side, again, that's a poorly drained mineral soil. The isolated area where we're going to enhance in the eastern property line, that's a poorly drained mineral soil, disturbed, but it's not a floodplain. So
Okay.
the only floodplain soils are associated with Philly Brook. So there's a mix of both.
Okay. The reason I was asking is because there was mention in here of varved soils when you went out with Peter, I guess, to look at them. And I was wondering if there was direct impacts to those areas that may be varved. Because
No.
because a structural perspective, that'd be difficult to compensate impacts to that.
I agree. No, we don't have anything proposed in that area.
Okay. And can you talk about the functionality of the impacted wetlands versus the wetland mitigation areas?
Well, if you were here last, I know you weren't here last time, Dave, but the entire has been compromised through human disturbances for decades. I look back to the 30s, and the area has been deforested for agriculture for an extended period of time for a number of decades. As I said, I started in the 30s. And the development to the north of the site has incised and eroded Philly Brook. So the whole site has been. One other thing is a lot of areas I found. I'm not sure why. Who knows what happened with that. But the areas that could be impacted are relatively low quality. And then our mitigation should improve, particularly with the invasive species removal, particularly along the apartment side where we had the sewer line that comes through, as you could imagine how many hours of sewer. And frankly, we're going to do them a favor by right now there's a sewer right here, but it's a manhole.
Yeah, I'm having trouble hearing what Jim is saying here.
Planting nice wildlife enhancement shrubs, and that includes the little isolated area that's in the northeast portion by the property line. We're going to enhance that area. So, in my opinion, we're actually make some improvement. And also, one other thing, the two ditches from the agricultural field to the west, right now, that's been eroding since probably the 30s, or maybe even earlier than that. And now we're going to stop that erosion from entering the wetlands, which includes Philly Brook, by piping and properly taking care of that runoff there. So I think we're certainly enhancing what's out there now with good, robust mitigation and enhancement plan.
Right. So are the functions, from a functions and values perspective, are the functions and values of the existing wetlands being replicated or improved upon? I guess what are the functions and values? for the existing versus new?
In my report, I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at it, but I kind of turned the wetlands into wetland 1.
Excuse me, hey, Barry,
The wetlands that follow.
Hold on 1 second, Jim.
Alan, you're muted. Alan, you're muted.
Sorry, we were trying to get some feedback.
muting myself. Okay. Okay, continue, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Okay, so the Philly Brook riparian zone has 4 principal functions, essentially groundwater recharge discharge. The floodplain itself had the sediment toxin retention, nutrient removal, and then we had obviously wildlife habitat. Wetland 2 was the off-site pond. Hang on a second. Dropped it. Yeah, it's the man-made pond, which we only hit the very, very eastern edge of that pond, and most of the pond is off-site. So that really does, and we're not doing anything to that buffered, forested buffered side of the pond. And then the last one is that disturbed, what I call wetland 3 in my report, is the disturbed little isolated pocket up by the eastern property line that we're going to enhance that and make that a lot better than what it is now, which we had fill piles and invasive species and all kinds of other nonsense.
Okay. I just had one more question and I'll pass it on.
Principal function, which was the recharge discharge. And there was a few functions that were there, but not principal with the wetland 2 with the pond. And then wetland 3 really didn't have anything at all.
Okay. All right. So my last question had to do with the vegetative buffers. I know trees are going to be taken down. Obviously, these are more mature than what will be replaced. Can someone talk about a little bit more detail about the impacts to the existing vegetation and the proposed replacement for those impacts? I'm still sort of harping on this being a riparian corridor and the loss of functionality, for lack of better words, of the mature to semi-mature forest versus newly planted vegetation.
Well, I'll take some of that and I'll let Rachel take over if she needs to. In my report the other day, if you recall, I talked a little bit about which why I got back into the aerial photos back to the 30s, and then I actually have a couple of pictures, or a couple of figures, I should say, showing the site in the 1970s and then again in 1990, showing the site either deforested or the majority of it deforested, and actually the whole area to the east and to the west was deforested as well. So, and then we have a sewer line, which I'm sure at the time that sewer line went in, they deforested it. Oh, there we go. So this site is not what do you say? It's not. It has been disturbed or deforested at more than one occasion for many years. So what we're doing now is nothing new to this site, and we are going to be replacing things that are being removed with other. Because most of the understory, I got to be honest, is invasive. So except for the tree canopy, everything else is invasive, with a few spice bushes and a few other wildlife shrubs that we like. Everything else is horrible. So we are going to be replacing it. And yes, it's not going to grow to a semi-mature forest overnight, but it will get there. And the one that Rachel has up right now is the 1970 view of the site. And as you can see, where Jolly Road is going to be is completely agricultured. The site is agricultured. You can see
What was the question? Excuse me, what was the question?
pond, which is, Rachel, you
What?
can move over to the little man-made pond, nope, right
Excuse
there.
me,
There's your
Jim,
man-made pond.
what was Jim, what was the question?
So.
Hold on one second,
my
Jim.
answer is
Jim,
we
one
need to
minute,
cite-
Jim. Sorry that,
What is the question? Why are we going back to the 30s?
Because the question was, is the removal of the tree canopy within the riparian corridor of Tilly Brook going to have an impact?
No, stick to the present, stick to the present.
And this is not the first time that the site has had the tree canopy.
Rachel, could you please tell him that I said stick to the present?
Remove invasives, which includes the addition of some trees.
I can't mute him.
It's our opinion that we're seeing right now with our
Jim, I think
proposal will not have a significant impact.
Jim, your time's up.
we're all,
The chairman does not want me to go back to later years, but you have to understand the site. You need to go back to the later years. Because if you don't, then you don't understand the facts of what's going on.
Rachel, put the phone up to the microphone, please.
You're answering a question.
Jim,
Current conditions.
you're done. We're moving on. Any other
right.
questions?
I'm good. You
Alan, I
can
have
move
a
on.
few questions.
Kevin,
Alan, I have a few. So hopefully mine will require a lot less shorter answers. Just for clarification, the wetland enhancements are exactly enhancements. There's no creation of new wetlands, correct?
so in the areas that we are calling enhancement, correct, it is just enhancement. Sorry, I can try to bring you back. This entire area with the kind of plus sign cross hatching is wetlands creation. So it is a dual purpose area, over 20,000 square feet, which is part of the 1.5 to 1 mitigation area. We'll have wetland seed mixes as well as associated shrubs and mature trees that can take a variety of water inundation at different levels. We will have 2 seed mixes. So there is a flatter shelf area, which you are able to see better on the landscape plans that you were provided in print. The flat shelf will have one type of seed mix and the side slopes will have a different
Rachel,
type of.
That's fine. I'm fine. I just
Okay.
again,
Absolutely.
Peter, do we need to say enhancements is fine in your behalf, or do you think we should also say any sort of creation, or is enhancement?
Yeah, they're creating that compensation area will be a created wetland. I did have one other possibility for additional enhancement, but they're providing not just the enhancement of the created wet, or not just mitigation as created wetlands, they're also providing the enhancement around the rest of the wetlands, these other areas that she's pointing out now.
I'm fine with that, but I guess for the public, we know what enhancements are, and I just want to be able to see if we need to separate creation, which is new, versus enhancing what's existed. I'm just going to leave that to you to make that decision. I'm fine with it the way it is. I understand what's going on, but I don't know for public records if we need to separate it for any legal, discussion. I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Their overall mitigation for the wetland impacts includes this area of created wetlands and the mitigation areas that are at the little pocket wetlands just to the southeast there, and on the other side of the brook along the limits of clearing. And there may be other opportunities, but that created wetland and the enhanced wetland edge both count for or against the mitigation. So there's two parts. There's an enhanced wetland with vegetated buffer plantings, and the enhancement that they want to do to the isolated wetlands. Then the compensation area is new or created wetlands.
Right. I guess I just want to clarify again on the application for the permit, part 13 says areas of wetlands created, enhanced, or restored. I just wanted to delineate three, if we can, in the plans to see what actually was created, what was enhanced and or restored, just for clarity, if we could.
We can.
We're
Absolutely.
I
happy-
apologize.
No, it's, we're happy to work with the town staff as well, like Peter said, to explore any additional opportunities he sees for mitigation, creation, or enhancement, whatever he sees fit.
And a couple other minor questions I have again. Number two was the, and I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, so I don't know if this was covered or not. Any endangered species database that you guys look at for DEP to see within the wetlands and or the areas there?
We do not have any of the natural diversity database areas on the site.
Okay, great. That's good. I agree with Peter that we should look into the conservation and David that we should look into the conservation easement some more. And then the other two questions I had quickly was the sewer easement. Do you have, again, I apologize, I don't have the plans in front of me, but I doubt you have a retaining wall with the sewer showing the distance of the sewer, the existing sewer easement. Is it just an easement or is there actual existing sewer pipes there? And what size are those? And
Correct.
depths, if you-
I will clarify the size. Someone's looking behind me, but so if you can see, I will run my mouse up along it. There is a sewer trunk line owned and operated by the MDC that runs completely through the site. We have met with the MDC and explained our intentions for this project in the past to make sure that they are aware of what we're doing. We do not have any structures in there.
Sorry, just for the sake of time, I don't mind the coordination part. I know you did your due diligence. My question is, do we know what roughly the depth is and what's the size of the pipe? The only reason I'm asking, since you've pulled back that retaining wall, we want to make sure there's no, you've done your whatever calculation you did for your hydrostatic soil pressures and make sure that doesn't affect the sewer. So I wasn't sure what size distances and so forth, if that was taken in. If it's farther away, then we're fine.
I will let our professional engineer just speak a little bit more to the numbers than I have the knowledge for. Give me 1 second.
Hello, members of the commission. Kevin, my name is Daniel Jameson. I'm a project manager.
Why don't you sit down? What is your name again?
I'm Daniel Jameson. I'm a professional engineer in the state of Connecticut.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Kevin, to answer your question, the sewer line is installed. It is very deep, and we are it is a 15-inch large sewer line, and basically we are not, with the elevation that we are proposing, we aren't going to be cutting that area at all. We are going to be filling on top of that area. So based off of that, we don't feel any that we will be impacting this easement or the actual sewer main with this proposed activity. And we do have to submit an application to the MDC, which they will review the plan. And if they find that our plan is satisfactory, then we'll, if we need to make any accommodations based off of their findings, we will. But in our opinion, that with what we're proposing, we are not going to be impacting the sewer line at all.
Okay, great. I just want to double check because I don't know eventually if those soil pressures would affect the retaining wall and if it does eventually collapse into our flood zone, which we don't want, obviously, and within our wetlands. So good. I'm glad you're doing that part too. But Peter, I don't know if we need to have.
No.
Yeah, Peter, I don't think we need about that, right?
We don't what? I'm sorry, say again?
We don't need to have anything from NDC giving us the green light for them to have that retaining wall that close to that easement and that sewer, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Rachel, can you give us, can you show us sheet C UT1 utility plan? It's number 13.
Absolutely. I'm going to stop sharing just for a minute so you don't see
Okay.
all behind this.
That one shows, I think, the clearest picture of where the sanitary sewer is. And it is like between the building and the proposed retaining wall. So the distance, I'm not exactly sure, but it's the southerly building, apartment building. The sanitary sewer is running through the parking lot. There's an aisle heading. This is heading east. There's an aisle and then
Right.
there's the retaining wall. So they're quite a distance away.
Right.
Yeah, you got to zoom way in to see the easement.
No, I see it, but I wasn't sure if you were talking about an elevation view of where the wall is and really and the size of the pipe. I thought you were talking about it. I understand this. I can see this. I thought
Okay.
you, Peter, I thought there was an elevation view of the retaining wall, like a cut sheet. But that's fine. Okay, I'm good with that. And then the last thing is that, and I think Peter, you mentioned it. I think the permit stays, the application stays with the permittee. In this case, it's Corporate Crossing. If there's sale before or after, I think they'll be held responsible. And then at that point, either they or the new, I don't know, whoever buys it will then submit a new application. I think we have to hold, I think, the current permittee until we figure out what's going on before or after sale.
Yes,
That's all
the wetlands regulations say that the the permittee has to make a request for a transfer of the permit. So the permittee holds the entire permit, and if they transfer it to another entity, that transfer has to be done with a letter in writing requesting the transfer, and it would come, because this is a commission permit, that would come to you guys for a for an approval vote for the new permittee. The problem is if parts of the project are sold, then it gets difficult. But I think at this point, they're not asking for a separable permit. They want a permit for the whole project. If and when things get sold, we're going to have to deal with it then.
Right, but what I'm saying is that we providing the permit, tonight or potentially whenever we pass or whatever we vote on to Corporate Crossing, and I'm saying that should stay with Corporate Crossing, and even if they sell a part of the property, it still stays with them. And then at that point, either they or the new owner submits a new application, or however you want to word it at that point.
Yeah.
Someone has to be responsible.
That's the way it'll go.
You're right, but I caution you that it would not necessarily be a new application. It would be
Correct.
a request for a permit transfer.
Right.
I stand corrected. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, I have a couple questions. Where do you plan to push the snow to? On both sides? Do you have designated areas that you wanted to stockpile the snow?
I believe that one of the areas would be the cul-de-sac area, which is a larger area, if need be. I don't, Rachel, I don't know if you've.
Oh, in the office building, you were gonna push it into the corner. I think I asked that last time.
Yeah.
All right.
Right, if you prefer that we designate specific areas on our plans, we're happy to outline some for you just to ensure that traffic is still able to maneuver in the winter.
Yeah, if you could just mark it somewhere. I don't want you pushing into the wetlands or a spot where it's gonna run off or, so. staff can
Absolutely.
get it. I do have a problem with the subdivision. And that my understanding is that we cannot subdivide a parcel that is landlocked. And since you don't have access, that's what we would be doing. And I think it would be better I think it would work better if you withdrew the portion of the subdivision request now. Wait till your approvals and wait till your state cut is approved. And then it's a simple application to subdivide it. I'm concerned that the lot will be created with no access, and some owner down the road will go to court and come back to us and say, okay, cross over the brook. I don't think the town should be put in that position. Does that make sense, Attorney Barham?
I don't think I'm following it because there are two separate roadways or driveways for each individual site. So there's access, and in fact, when we met with the fire department, they specifically said they were not requiring any intersection between the two developments, that they were satisfied given the two entryways off of Cottage Grove Road. So I'm not sure that I share your concern about anybody challenging that, because they each have their own access.
Well, the access for the apartments is the state, right, the state curb cut, right?
Correct.
Okay, which you do not have.
Well, we have to get that, and
Okay.
obviously when we go
But what I'm saying is you got the cart before the horse. That you should wait till you get the curb cut and then come back for the subdivision.
Well, I think that's more of a zoning issue. When we go before zoning, there will be, things that we have to present to the State Traffic Commission, to the, and that, includes traffic, the traffic studies as well as the curb cut. And if those were for some reason disapproved, we would not be able to go forward with the project, because typically the TPZ, those are requirements to go forward. So from a wetlands perspective, I don't see that, subdivision, has any real relevance.
Well, wetlands has to approve subdivisions.
Correct.
If I may jump in really quick, we did have this conversation recently after the meeting with Peter Castaldi. In order to apply for the encroachment permit with the Department of Transportation, they do need to see approved site plans from the town. So we cannot apply for that encroachment permit, which typically the contractor does until they have approved stamped town plans in hand.
Yes,
Wetlands and planning and zoning.
but what I'm saying is if we approve a subdivision, we're approving a lot with no access.
Mr. Chairman, you don't approve subdivisions.
Wetlands Commission does.
No, you just approved the wetlands portion of the subdivision.
Peter?
Subdivision of land is controlled by the Town Plan and Zoning Commission.
And I may ask, yeah, if Peter Castaldi is able to clarify, I believe we voted to approve the initial subdivision application in the January meeting. We brought in the two-part meeting. I believe, and Peter can correct me if I'm wrong, that was already approved.
No, that's not correct.
No, okay.
Part of the project includes the subdivision, and the wetlands regulations say that the Wetlands Commission can evaluate the proposed lots and make a recommendation to town planning and zoning if they feel that any of the lots are unsuitable for building, for whether they have wetlands on them or otherwise. Grading may be another reason to make a recommendation. But the application includes the request, I guess, from the applicant to approve the subdivision of land with wetlands and watercourses on it. So it's less than clear in my mind what, if the Wetland Commission felt that, say, the westerly lot was not suitable for development, they can make a recommendation to planning and zoning that lot not be included or not be approved by planning and zoning. So it's not the creation of the lines, if you will. It's the approval of the suitability of the property for development. I think that's where the commission has recommendation authority. But the commission is not approving the Wetlands Commission is not approving the subdivision or denying the subdivision. They can only make recommendations.
I apologize. I was misremembering our dual process with the map amendment last month. But if I may offer something just to kind of quantify, if we were to remove the residential development, which the applicant is not happy to do, that would only reduce about 26% of the overall wetlands development and direct impacts. There is still a large majority of impacts that have or will be occurring with the office development. And again, we are doing everything we can to further reduce those impacts as you've seen over the last month, as well as provide ample mitigation and enhancement areas.
I also, concur with Peter's analysis that the subdivision, it's unfortunate that that's the term of art that's used, but it's different than the TPZ jurisdiction of actually subdividing the land. You're looking at the subdivision for purposes of wetlands appropriateness. And again, we're presenting this as one development, and all the detailed that we provided and the questions that you've asked hopefully have convinced you that the plan is sound and it protects the wetlands. So there would be no reason not to agree to the quote unquote subdivision, but it has nothing to do in my mind with the division of land, really reviewing the quality of the project as it impacts the wetlands and protected areas.
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
I had one.
Okay.
And
Katie?
it's for Peter. And looking at the trees that dominate the vegetation, I'm wondering, are you satisfied that the replacement trees, especially the deciduous trees, are good choices? Because some of the really bigger ones, like sycamores and red oaks, are not being replaced in this habitat.
I'm okay with the specific species that are proposed. Some of them are going to need to like to have wet feet, and so those is in the compensation area. The trees that are there now do not have wet feet, so the newer trees will need the new trees will need to have be able to stand wet conditions. So there may be a change in that respect. I'm of the opinion that they probably need more trees than fewer. But I think we have to be careful, particularly in that floodplain, flood compensation area, that if it's going to be reforested eventually, that it will still function as a compensation. So I'm not sure exactly how all of those details will be fleshed out, I guess. But I think the planting plan shows quite a bit of planting.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the sheet now. I think it's good to look at that as well, and you'll see that there's like I said, there's fairly significant areas of planting within the compensation area and elsewhere. And so the trees, I believe, are suitable. Yes, I guess that's the short answer. I didn't see any trees that like to grow in the swamp, but certainly these look okay for me.
And then also related to that, the shrubs and plantings that were chosen, do you think that they'll support enough of the wildlife that's currently there?
I think it'll enhance that habitat because right now there isn't those kind of plants there. So,
I didn't think so,
yeah, so it's mostly invasive wild rose and other ones that are in there that are just, there's almost no habitat, for food for the critters out there in the existing plan. So it will be an improvement.
Great, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Who's that? Any other
Sound like somebody
questions?
Actually, sorry, I have one follow-up question because Peter just brought it.
Sorry.
Rachel, on your plan, you said there were 2 areas where you have now put in riprap. Or I'm getting some feedback. I'm not sure. All right, yeah. In your plan, you have some rip. Where you have. I think it's Mary. Can you mute?
I can't mute him. It's not letting me do anything, to tell you the truth. Barry, can you mute yourself? He's muted. Thank you.
Sorry, Rachel, on your site plan, the one you pulled up earlier showing the entire site, there was 2 areas where you said that they were dry, or I forgot the word you used. You put in riprap for some of in the wetlands for the storm from the west to the east, underneath a bridge or underneath a roadway, I believe, the new roadway for the
This was the eroded channels
right,
along the west side. Yeah.
Right. What size pipes? I forgot. What size? Is there pipes there? You said you have some.
There are pipes. I'm letting Daniel Jameson sit back down. He has those information.
Hello again, members of the commission.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Sorry. Hey, Daniel, again. What size are your pipes there again?
Yes,
Good.
I am going to actually pull up our drainage plan where we could see these pipes. And I did want to clarify something. Last time I did say that this one was a 15, but this is actually a 12-inch pipe. So we have a 15-inch crossing. It is a head wall on the east side or west side, and then another head wall on the east side. But this is basically just allowing the existing flow path to continue underneath our road. And basically, as Jim McManus said and Peter alluded to, the current channel is incised and is eroding because of the incised nature of it. So we will be armoring the inlet and the outlet of this crossing now to prevent that erosion from continuing to occur. So basically fixing the inside state of this channel and allowing the water to cross our road in a protected way.
Now, the part of the erosion obviously could also be the we've had higher intensity storms. We've had a lot of 100-year storms recently. Is that 12-inch pipe going to be able to take off? Obviously, you probably did your intensity runoffs. It'll be able to take a 100-year storm, right?
Yes. Oh, well, the pipe crossings, we are only regulation says we design them for the 25-year storm, which we have, and we do use the new the NOAA Atlas 14 rainfall data, which is a daily updating database that always updates that 2-year, 100-year, or 2-year, 10-year, 25, 50-year, and 100-year storm rainfall depth amounts based off of the rain that's happening. So we use that data to size it, which is more or speaks to more water than what the Connecticut DOT's drainage manual speaks to. So we did size the pipes for the 25-year storms as required for regulation, by regulation.
That's fine. Again, I still feel like, the data sometime, we've had a lot more 100-year storms in the last 5 years because of, global, whatever it is, global warming, or whatever you want to call it. But just make sure you have any overtop in there that may pick up sediment or anything from the roadways and bring it into the brook or bring it into that area, into the wetlands or anything like that. Again, I know you're doing it per the book, but I think the intensity of the storm have been greater, and maybe, I don't know, that 12-inch, maybe, again, I'll leave it to Peter to, we'll leave it at that, but I would definitely say design for a little bit more higher intensity. Do you know if you had to put a 15-inch storm, would that cover the 100-year storm?
I can't say.
Did you do a model for the?
But there is additional capacity in that pipe. As you see, it's a 12-inch pipe. It has quite a bit of slope to it. So there is quite a bit of capacity. I could just do a check to see if the 100-year capacity would flow through it. But even if it didn't, we have it of course, as all bodies of water work, it'll pool up a little bit. I can't say for certain that it wouldn't overtop the road here, but if it did, this is a low spot. The catch basins there are the low spot along this whole entire strip here. So if it was to be a flooded issue, which in a 100-year storm, this whole floodplain area, well, now with our compensatory storage area, providing the volume that we're taking away from here, would fill up. So if there was a flood, the buildings and the main places where people will be safe from that flooded area. And at worst case scenario, this area would be flooded for the duration of that peak intensity of the 100-year storm. And then as the water recedes, this area would drain out as it would and get back to original conditions. So I feel the way that our grading
No, I'm
plan,
not too worried about, I appreciate that. I'm not worried about the people. I'm just worried about the wetlands. And I just want to make sure there's no, anything that would affect the wetlands in terms of, maybe oil sleeks or, anything that would get into the wetlands and, affect the thing. But just take a peek at your 100-year and just take a peek at your 100-year flow and just make sure that just out of curiosity to see what it is.
10-4.
That's all I have.
We can provide that.
Thanks.
Data, no problem.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Any comments from the public? All right. Any comments from any last words from the applicant?
I do believe we lost David Barham, unfortunately, but I just wanted to thank you all for your time and patience as we work through your questions. We appreciate your consideration tonight. We are happy to work with town staff, as noted, to work through any of the potential approval conditions you see fit.
All righty. Nice job, Rachel. Any comments from the commission?
Yeah, I do have a comment. I just wanted to go on record saying that based on the application and presentation and response to questions, I don't feel that the applicant has adequately addressed the impacts to regulated resources. So I just wanted to go on the record to say that, because the 500-foot buffer around the vernal pools is a regulated resource. And unless there's a scientific study that shows that resource doesn't exist on the site, I just want to say that I don't think that it was adequately addressed in the presentation. So that's all.
David, did you hear that?
Muted, David.
My apologies, my computer crashed and I had to reboot the whole thing.
Tell me about it. I got the same problems. All right. Any other comments from the commission? All right. All right. So do we want to close the public hearing? Peter, do we have to do a finding of no prudent feasible alternatives in the public hearing or afterwards when we make?
It needs, the finding needs to be made with the motion to approve. So
Okay.
after the close of the public.
Okay.
hearing.
So do we want to close the public hearing at this point? What's your pleasure, people?
Sure.
I think so.
Who said that? I need it for Joyce. Who said okay?
Mr. Singh.
I made a motion and Katie
All right,
seconded.
make a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
That was made by Barry, seconded by Katie. All right, all in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye. Opposed? Abstains? Okay, the public hearing is closed. Thank you. Do we want to vote on it now, or do we want to, are we waiting for any additional information?
David? Does David want more clarification?
Well, I'm ready to vote, but if they wanted to take some time to give us better clarification, that might change my vote.
Attorney Barham, I don't know if you heard that, but David Liupa was concerned about the impact from the
Just
vernal
the
pools.
regulated resources, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we would be happy to take some additional time if you think it would be helpful in evaluating your support for the project. So I just want to make sure that Peter is confident we're not going to violate any legal timelines that he outlined at the beginning. I believe you have 35 days, if I remember correctly, to make a decision from the close of the public hearing. So
yeah.
there should be sufficient time.
Is that correct, David? I mean, Peter?
Yes, I have to say though, if the commission is looking for additional information, that I think it should come in the public hearing as part of the public hearing.
Well,
So
actually it did. Kevin Hussein was talking about the size of the pipe. David Liupa was talking about the Vernon pools and the impact on the
Vegetated buffer.
on the buffer.
yeah, the 500-foot buffer.
Right.
That's true. The questions were brought up. So yes, the Wetlands Commission has 35 or 65 days, I think, from the close of the public hearing to make their decision.
Now,
So
yeah,
that's certainly within the authority of the commission to say, okay, we're going to close the public hearing, but we want this additional more detailed information and postpone the vote until the March 15th meeting.
yeah. Well, we've already closed the public hearing, so any additional information has to come through you, Peter, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So I have one last question for David. Is it possible at this time of year to assess whether or not there are any obligate species that would be in that area?
No, that's the problem. It really has to be, ideally, it's going to be early April. Late March, early April is typically when you do vernal pool studies. So it kind of puts the applicant in a tight spot because that study can't be done this time of year.
Yeah, the project at 65 Jolly Drive, which has the vernal pools on them, they provided for that application, I believe, a study of the functions and values of the vernal pools, and I think they even looked at 750 feet away. But I don't recall what their conclusions were. I can certainly review that and share it with the commission if you think that would be helpful in that regard.
I think it
Peter,
would.
are we able to vote with that contingency or a contingency, or really can't? Well, like, I don't think we can because it would change. It could change some potential site plan depending on what they find. So I was trying to think of a way to vote with
I
any
don't.
contingencies, I guess.
Yeah, the commission can make many different conditions of approval. Whether or not they will be agreed to by the applicant or whether they can be legally upheld is another question. My feeling is that they have some area of the project is within that 500 feet. But it is along the easterly side where, again, there's already regulated activities happening in the upland review area from the watercourse. And the relatively small area of this 500 from the vernal pools is not a big part of the overall project. It's not nothing, but it's not a huge part. And I think it would be probably a good idea to have the applicant show those 500-foot vegetated buffer zones around the vernal pools, so the commission has an idea of what these impacts, graphically would be. If there's a loss of vegetation in those areas, that could be considered certainly an impact to the 500-foot area. But if they are proposing to cut down for the compensation area and reforest that disturbed part of the 500-foot buffer, then there would be a temporary impact, but I don't think it would be a permanent one. But that's something that the applicant, I think, would have to address. Perhaps Mr. McManus can address that in a little more detail. But we're also running way over an hour for this one. So I think the commission should decide what they want to do, and we can move on to the next one.
I'll just wrap up part of the point that I was bringing up is that 500-foot area is recognized as a regulated resource, and in the calculations for the application, that's not accounted for. So when we're talking about on the application, there's a line that says area of vernal pool habitat disturbed. They have 0 listed there. So it's not, I guess it's not adequately accounted for in the application. And then if we're concerned with the disturbance of the habitat, then there should be discussion of mitigation to the habitat. And then I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that I also talked about the vegetation area being a semi-mature forest and being replaced by new plantings. And there wasn't really, I don't think, adequate discussion about that. So that's something to consider for the, if the meeting extends to another, if we extend it to another meeting.
So we've already closed the public hearing, so all this is clarification.
Yep.
So why don't we table the motion of the application until the next meeting, and maybe we can get some new clarification information in. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to table the application until the March
15. March 15.
March 15 meeting? Is there a motion to table it?
So moved.
Made by Kevin Wilcox,
Seconded.
seconded by Katie.
Mhm.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. So it's tabled to the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care all.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
alrighty. Let's see if I can get other people in here.
Those other guys are probably asleep by now.
Yeah.
Oh, your 1 hour became 2 hours, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, I tried.
Yeah, but you didn't say anything. You just raised your hands.
No, that was about something else. What happened was, by the time we got to 8 o'clock, you guys were talking, we were all talking, so I wasn't gonna cut us off. All right, so what's our next application is? PDS, so we gotta bring George in. Right? We're gonna make George a panelist. And we gotta bring in Frank, right?
Right.
And he's a panelist. Just one side note, Gail, I see you're at the meeting. Are you expecting some other application? You're muted. Gail? Gail?
Haven't heard her all night.
I thought something was brought up about Maple Avenue.
That's gonna be at the next meeting, right, Peter?
Okay,
Yes, that's correct. March
Next meeting.
15th meeting.
okay,
Thank you.
Thank- yep.
Okay. All right, so now we gotta bring in Chris. Both Chris's? No, we don't. Okay, we got two Chris's, right? They're both muted. All right. Who's that? They're not a panelist.
Shoo.
Shoo. Okay, is there a motion? Is there a motion to take the application off the table for number 2?
So moved.
Made by Katie.
Second.
Now y'all jumping. Second, Barry. Seconded by Barry. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so we're off the table. Back to the public hearing. And we're gonna allow you 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, we'll reassess.
I think I'll be asleep after 45 minutes.
All right, so whereabouts are we? You were gonna resurvey?
Well, we went out there. We already had the survey points accurate. We had to add more to the plan. We had to put more grades onto the plan, but we went out and we checked it. And what the neighbor said was there is a high spot in between the edge of our driveway and the low spot by the railroad tracks. So on the revised plan, we've shown we're going to dig a small swale through that one high area in order to ensure that the water leaves our site and goes back to the track. The little bit of runoff that comes off of the back driveway. We have revised the drainage to take away all the rain leaders, the rain garden overflow, the loading dock area. Everything gets repiped to the street. We've revised the drainage accordingly. Met with Peter, we've done that stuff. And we've revised our drainage calculations. We reduced all the runoff from all the storms that's even going into the wetland. So we've really mitigated the amount of water going in there. And if we dig this small swale, basically it's like just a little 3-foot path in between the trees. We showed it as a straight line, but it's gonna meander through the trees just to get through that one, I would call it a hump area, and to the lower ground, because otherwise the rest of the site flows back there.
All right. Peter, should we bring in the email now?
Yes.
Okay.
So
I received an email from the abutter and I forwarded it to Peter to review and discuss with the abutter.
And I went and met with the abutter, Mr. Jenkic, this morning, and looked at his site and reviewed what was proposed by the applicant. The property owner, Mr. Jenkins, indicated that the chain link fence, which is at his building, is actually on the property line. And that the proposed new driveway is going to be very, very close. I showed him the phase 2 grading and utility plan, which is in your set, and I'll tell you the number in a minute. It's C3-301. And it shows that the new proposal includes a curbing along the south side of the new pavement, as well as this new rain garden to take the surface runoff, treat it, and then if it overflows, it goes out to the street. The applicant mentioned a drainage ditch or swale that's proposed off the southwesterly most corner. But this location may not be the best location for the channel. The intention was to provide some relief for runoff that's going to go into this small treatment area made by the 142 contour, and have somewhere for this water to drain to the west rather than to the south. So I think that the location of this has to be determined in the field with a with a better idea of where the new improvements are going to be, and hopefully it can be created without cutting down any trees. So I'm looking at this as a temporary impact to the wetlands that will have a minimal impact on the existing vegetation, but it'll also provide some relief for excess water that may be going to the neighbor. My observations today indicated that it might be better off quite a bit further south. But again, it shouldn't be considered a fixed location. And I think that the proposed drainage improvements to take considerable amount of runoff to the street is a good plan. And based on the drainage calculations, there should be less runoff getting to the southerly part of these wetlands next to Mr. Jenick after the improvements are done.
Thank you, Peter. Should we bring in questions by the abutter? Are we ready for that?
Yes.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Where are they?
We have Don Jensick and Chris Jensick.
Oh, hi, you in?
We're in.
We're in. We're listening. Question. I met with Peter today, Don Jensick, if the new swale drainage ditch, whatever you want to deem it to be, if it can run continuously. I know on the plan it shows that this goes for a vague distance. If it can be a continuous, clean path to the swale at the railroad right of way versus just kind of like going halfway and then letting it kind of like run willy-nilly to the left, to the right, to the north, to the south, to the east and the west. Can it be a clear, decisive path from the edge of their disturbed non-pervious surface to the railroad tracks, so there won't be any question 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road of why I'm getting water now that I wasn't getting years prior. And if a curb can also run continuously to wherever that swale path trench is dug, so there won't be any water coming my direction. That is my question.
Right. The length of the thing is going to be determined in the field, and it's going to have to physically work to get the runoff towards the west. There's no way that this ditch or any other improvements on this property is going to prevent water from draining towards your property, which is lower.
I understand it, but I don't want any new water, any
Right.
water coming
So,
off the surface.
right. So they provided us with drainage calculations, which indicate that there should be less water.
Absolutely.
Okay, but I just want a clear means for that water to run. I don't want someone to dig a trench 20 feet and say that's sufficient. I just want a clear pathway. That's all I'm asking for, is a clear pathway to go to the railroad tracks.
I think that was the intention.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Do you want to give Frank a chance to review his project? Do you want me to jump right in?
You can jump right in.
It's fine.
All right. Got to make it under 45 minutes.
Yeah.
You're the man,
Okay.
Peter.
So this application, has gone through its own life. It has morphed from the original application, which had, which didn't show any wetlands impact to. We required them to flag the wetlands, and then they had wetland impact, and we asked them to reduce them. They did. We asked them to reduce it again. They did again. We asked them to do more stormwater management and to address the neighbor at 65, the Jenkins concerns about additional runoff. And I believe they have addressed those things. So I am recommending that there be, again, my normal conditions of approval, but the ones that are specific to this project include requirement for the wetland mitigation areas to be constructed during the first construction season under the supervision of a wetland scientist and monitored for 3 years after initial stabilization. There's also the requirement for the stormwater quality and maintenance reports on an annual basis, as well as weekly inspection reports, a $3,000 bond, and the list is pages 3, 4, and to the top of page 5, 16 in total. In this case, the applicant is PDS Engineering and Construction, and it is at this point, unless they want to discuss changing that, the applicant would become the permittee. But the applicant is not the property owner in this case. The other thing that I should have mentioned on the last one, the paragraph under my recommended conditions, is that the applicant was requested to make a statement that they understand and are in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval. The applicant may request modifications to or elimination of any recommended condition of approval. However, the commission makes the final decisions on which conditions of approval are included if there's a motion to approve. So in this case, I think the applicant has modified the plan to address our concerns. I think they've done a decent job at understanding the Jenkins concerns, and that the plan addresses those things. And I think it's a decent plan. The consideration of prudent and feasible alternatives was addressed or responded to by the inclusion in the package of the previous or the original, I should say, the original proposal, which had twice as many parking spaces and an extra wide aisle and a lot more wetland impacts. So again, these are not pristine wetlands. They're disturbed wetlands. They've been dug out many years ago for drainage, I think from when they were in agriculture. But it's not a high functioning wetland or even a very big wetland when it comes down to the overall impacts. Now, the proposal shows 3, I think, or 4 wetland mitigation areas, some creation and some enhancement. And I think that they've got more than 2.5 times, as I recall, the mitigation to impact. But I don't think the small area in the southwest corner should be considered a wetland creation area if its main function is for stormwater. So that's those are my points in a nutshell, I guess.
And
All right.
Peter, also, we improved the drainage quality, leaving the site with the 2 storm scepters that you recommended.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So in that case, as is our present policy, where with new impervious coverage, we asked for additional stormwater quality measures, and that's what's being provided. In fact, for the north parking lot, they're providing that stormwater quality unit for existing pavement, not just for the new pavement.
All right. Any other questions from the public? Any question?
Go ahead.
Chris, Don?
Question, snow removal in the wintertime. Are they gonna fill that mitigation, depression, whatever you want to deem it to be, where it would get blocked and then cause the water to come over onto my property?
No, it's going to the front yard.
So it's shown, there's a designated area shown on the plan, because I didn't see it. Because now they're bringing it all to the back.
Yeah, no, it's going, right, no, it's gonna go to the front yard. That's what was designated. I'm not sure.
Where it
on
says
the plan,
land
but-
bed?
Oh, it was just to the, right in the front yard is where it's flat, and we were gonna, store it there.
Because currently it's in the back and it's up against our fence.
Right, it's gonna go to the front.
So it's not gonna go into where that rain garden is, not in that depression. They're not gonna fill that in with snow.
No.
Okay.
And you'll mark it on the map, Frank?
Yes, we'll put it, we'll designate the area in the front, we'll show it on the
final, okay.
final plans, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions from the applicant, from the public? Chris, Don?
Nope, that was it.
All right. Any questions from the commission?
Yeah, I've got a question,
Kevin Wilcox?
and it's mostly for Peter. If we are talking about creating a swale to move water instead of going south onto the abutter's property, but instead we're shifting it off and dumping it onto somebody else's property, which is the right of way for the railway, are we creating another problem there?
I don't believe we are, and it's important to note that the swale may not need to go all the way to the right of way. Some of the spot grades in the area that we're talking about are in the 141, 146,
Yeah.
180, and the railroad tracks is less than 141.5. So there will be a slight diversion, but not something that should cause concern. I wouldn't think to the abutter to the west. There is a channel or a intermittent water course. I think it's better defined as a stormwater channel at this point, right next to the tracks that takes the water to the south.
Okay.
That's in the right of way of the railroad right of way.
I just want to make sure we're not fixing one problem by creating another.
No, and again, the calculations it submitted indicate that there's going to be less water going, even with this channel. I look at this channel as a relief area and an insurance that the runoff will go, will continue to go to the west and not necessarily to the south. You know, if this thing is placed, if the channel is placed further to the south than it's shown on the plan here, it's going to intercept, you know, additional runoff from the surface, not just from the pond. In fact, it may do that regardless of its location. So I don't think it's going to be a problem to ensure that the water goes more more west than it goes south, because it eventually all goes south anyway.
Kevin, if you look at sheet 301, you'll see the grades back there. You'll see the 141.17, and there's a couple of those, and then it actually goes up higher when it goes to the Gensic property. So it's a natural flow back to the tracks without that hump. We're just trying to eliminate that one stopping point.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from the commission? Any comments?
But I just had one, and I'll keep it short.
Right.
There's a.
We can take our time.
Well, I was gonna ask the same thing that Commissioner Wilcox asked, so he took care of that. There was a little bit of discussion about reduction of site runoff to the undisturbed wetland area. Is that correct? I thought that was mentioned. So is that? I guess can there be a little discussion about the potential impacts to the hydrology of that wetland? I don't know how much of a reduction it is, and will that impact the health of the wetland that's to be undisturbed, I guess, by reducing the site runoff to it?
We're basically reducing the 2-year, the 10-year, the 25-year, and the 100-year storms by pretty much an average of 1 cubic foot per second. That's the reduction overall with the finished site. So It's not a tremendous reduction. Right. It is a reduction, which was to handle the neighbor's concern.
Right. Okay. And then I guess one more quick follow-up, and this may be for George. Can you talk about the functionality of the mitigation versus the wetlands that are going to be disturbed?
So the wetlands that are going to be disturbed are mostly along the edge. As Peter said, some of them are disturbed, some of them are not. I went back all the way back to the 1934 aerial photographs. I found the ditch through the agricultural area. I could show it to you if you wanted to. But so the mitigation areas that we have selected, just by chance, also kind of they have a dual purpose. About half of them are removing invasive species. That's always a good thing. The larger one on the north, I forget which number that is actually has disturbed soils. So that's probably soils that were pushed back into the wetland a long time ago, probably when the first building was built, when, I don't know, 70s, somewhere back then. So that's going to be removed. There are unfortunately a couple of trees there that are going to be removed with it, but for the most part, it's an invasive species. So that's a plus. Going around the corner to the north, similarly, there's some invasive species. Again, a couple of trees will be removed. Other things will be planted, including trees. Going to the corner, the southwestern corner, that's probably a little more less disturbed, because we're kind of bumping into the more or less disturbed wetland there. But overall, because this wetland is not really high functioning, because it's kind of isolated hydrologically, was isolated a long time ago when the railroad went, but that railroad there has been for forever. But then when they put the flood control dike on the other side, that kind of broke it up, and there was development around it. So it's kind of an isolated wetland in a sense, not highly functioning. I mean, obviously, for what it is, it's not a bad looking wetland inside. There's not a lot of invasives in the center of it. I suspect that its hydrology is kind of marginal. in some areas. You're not going to find areas that are seasonally flooded except for the ditches. You know, I dug, even when I was there, heck, when I was there, I'm trying to remember, I was there in December and I was there in September. I dug down deep, I couldn't find groundwater, which is kind of surprising for the latter one when Pete and I were out there. So it might have been slightly dewatered over time because of its isolation. Now, the other thing you need to consider is that it's flowing kind of in a southerly direction. So to go back to your previous question about hydrology, in the fact that really what's, you know, if it's what's feeding the wetland hydrology is not the 2-year storm, it's not even the 1-year storm, it's some stuff that's less than that. And I don't think we're going to have any effect on that whatsoever. Again, I can't prove that because there were no calculations, but back to the question of functionality. I think with the addition of the buffer plantings that Peter asked us to do along, I don't know, I'm going to guess it's about 350 to 400 feet along the edge. We're planting 80 things, so 80 shrubs. So what's that? It's, you know, if we put them in a straight line, it would be every 4 feet, every 5 feet, something like that. So there's a lot of, you know, we can plug in the gaps. We'll do that in there. So we're taking the account that we're creating a new edge. So we're going to plug in the holes and make sure that we don't have invasives that are going to go into the wetland, which is a good thing. And I think overall, what we're doing, if it's not it probably is more of a functional equivalence, means we're protecting the functions and values of the existing wetland by doing the mitigation, by protecting the buffer, by putting a little more density in it, and by creating these other areas, taking out invasives. So I think at the end of the day, I would say there's pretty much a functional equivalency as far as what we're doing versus what we're taking. That's kind of where I stand on that.
Okay. Any other questions? I got a couple. The existing catch basin by the building that was flooded, will you clear that out?
What we're doing is that's being piped into the new drainage system that goes to the street. It's
What
being
size
changed.
pipe are you putting in there?
We're putting in a 12-inch pipe. Previously, there was a 6-inch pipe in there that probably collapsed or whatever over through the years. But we're changing that out, and all that new drainage is going to run to the storm scepter and then into the street. So that's going to totally eliminate that problem.
And Peter, you and I talked about possibly a berm along the property line. Was that realistic? To keep the flow of 105 flowing onto 65?
We're curbing the parking lot there, Alan, all the way to the detention basin.
How high of a curve?
A normal 6-inch bituminous curb.
Yeah, there really isn't room to create a berm with the driveway that close to the property line.
Yeah.
But the plans clearly show curb in that area, which will prevent the runoff from the pavement from going directly south. It'll go over to the small stormwater catchment area, and then through that channel, drainage channel, and head more to the west.
And the pavement will be slightly lower than the neighbor's property. So the curb will be at top of curb height. It'll be pretty much even with the top of existing grade there now, for the most part of it. So it's going to funnel all that water to that detention basin area.
Alrighty. So any comments from the public?
Go ahead. Don?
Yes, one other question. Calculations, 100-year storm, 50-year storm, relation to that rain garden. Is there like a fail-safe measure that if we get a 10-year storm or a 20-year storm, then all of a sudden I'm not going to get drowned out with water because of that storm. Is that calculated in there?
Yes, Don, we have there's actually a high level overflow pipe in the rain garden that goes to the street. So if the water builds up too much in there, it'll go to the high level overflow and flow to the street. It'll never overflow that garden and onto your property.
Okay. All right. That's my question and concern.
Right. Any other comments from the public?
Thank you.
Okay, any comments from the commission? Okay. The only thing I want to say is to Chris and Don, I did receive your email this morning. I didn't think it was proper for me to engage with you while the public hearing was going on and the application was before the commission. So I forwarded it to Peter. I don't want you to think that I was ignoring you.
No, actually, we thought of that afterwards, so we do appreciate that.
Okay.
Just tell her the email didn't go through, it bounced back.
Pardon?
When we sent the email on the town's website,
Yeah.
it didn't go through, it bounced back to us, so we took the next means of trying to communicate with the board. Like I try to send pictures and correspondence, but for some reason we're blocked, or a server or something was down. That's why we reached out to you. Okay. We're not trying to circumvent anything. We're trying to make sure everyone's aware of what's going on. That's all.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
And I just want to point out to the applicants, remember, you got somebody watching. So make this work. All right.
Definitely.
Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Made by Kevin Wilcox, seconded by
I'll second.
David Laupa. And any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So that was unanimous, I believe.
Well, for closing,
For closing the public hearing, yes. Okay, all right.
that was the easy part.
Yeah, okay. Now, what do we want to do? You want to hear it next time, vote on it now?
It doesn't make sense to postpone it.
No, it doesn't, but I have to ask.
Is it in the bylaws?
All right, who wants to make the motion? David, how about you making the motion?
I have my plan sheets ready. Okay, hang on.
Oh, yeah. Good date on that.
All right.
Reference to the latest plan is in the heading for the
Oh, is it?
recommended conditions of approval, and we have to make that, or you guys have to make that finding of no prudent and feasible alternatives.
Okay.
All right. I lost my page. Hang on. I'll get there.
Well, don't we also need the applicant to make a statement that they stand and are in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval?
Yes.
Yes.
We are. We've been, like Peter said, this has been a real iteration. We've gone through a lot of changes with this plan. Now I think we're in agreement with everything Peter is on the plan, and we will work with Peter to field locate that swale at the appropriate time.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so I move to approve the wetland permit application for regulated activities associated with 2 industrial building additions, paved driveway, parking additions, and storm drainage improvements at 105 and 125 Highland Park Drive, lots 5009 and 5010, map 372, with all conditions as noted in memorandum from town staff. and referencing plan sheet dated, hang on, that's what I can't find, hang on.
Is it on the front there, the 220?
2/2, February 2nd, 2021.
Right, but the plan says 2020.
No.
Was it?
No, it's
Oh, yeah, the
It's
revised date does.
2020 and revised to 21.
Yeah, it says 2/20 though, or 2020,
So it's supposed to be 21.
right? So with the,
so-
with the correction on the plan sheet for the correct, updating the date.
Yes. Oh, man.
For the plans that were received by the town on February 5th, 2021.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, with the stamped receive date of February 5th, 2021.
All right, so we made that motion. Did we include everything we were supposed to?
You got to include the finding of no prudent and feasible alternatives.
Oh, and that there's a finding of no feasible and prudent alternatives.
The proposed regulated activities.
I'm sorry, Joy, what'd you say?
I was just adding what he should have said, but he did say.
Oh.
Yeah, I think we need a seconder on the motion.
Yeah, second.
Second.
Seconded by Joy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. All right, thank you. Thank you
very
Chris.
much, guys.
Thank you
Thank you.
much. Have a
Thank
good
you for
evening.
Yep, good
participating.
night.
We made it in 45 minutes. Woohoo!
Yeah, you guys were
Hey.
great. Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Good
A
night.
new record.
That means the rest of them will let me stay another year.
Okay, I'm gonna try to do this as quickly. I did receive 2 new applications for a map amendment and a wetlands permit at 2 Maple Avenue. They submitted their application and their fee and plans that I asked them to give me more information. So they weren't able to be scheduled for tonight's, for public hearings for tonight. But in this case, I'm recommending that they be scheduled for the next meeting, which is March 15th. Assuming that they give me the additional information in time, we should be able to have, no problem having 2 new public hearings next time. The lot is right at the corner of Maple Avenue and Mountain Avenue on the southeast corner. There used to be a very old house there that was demolished several years ago. And the proposal is to create 2 duplexes on the property with no direct wetland impacts, but they do have regulated activities in the upland review area. So I'm recommending that they have public hearing for both applications, as I often do when there's a map amendment involved. And I think that there's good reason to it just having a public hearing in the public interest for this one. The other things that are on the list or on the agenda include the receipt of a wetlands agent permit at 15 Jolly Drive, which is the existing Good Dog Spot site. They want to build a second building on the property to be used for the town of Bloomfield dog pound, which is presently at the Simon Foundation off West Dudleytown Road, but they're looking to move it to this location. Again, this was one where they have some regulated activities in the upland review area, but no direct wetland impacts. So there's that one's coming through as a wetland agent permit. And I haven't received any other applications yet, but I've been getting a lot of inquiries about a project for a new new development or new potential development for a parcel on Wintonberry Avenue, across from the old Catholic Church, which I believe is a Korean Catholic church now. I'm sorry, across from the old synagogue, not a Catholic church. And Seabury owns a strip of land there, just to the east of Skinner Drive, and there's a lot of wetlands on it. It's about 19 acres, but I've been getting a lot of inquiries about that one, and I think that we'll see that something come in for that fairly soon. But the applications and the amount of interest on various properties that I get across my desk or through emails, it is increasing. It's not slowing down. So I expect that we'll be busy at least for the next couple of months. And there's interest in other undeveloped properties, some of which may be involved with wetlands and some without, but we got to look at all of them, make sure that they're okay. The ones that include wetland impacts will come to the commission as required. I don't have a lot of other stuff to go over, except, unless the commission wants to hear about the same ongoing projects that were ongoing last time. But I have to say that they're building or finishing the last house on Anthony's Way. They're continuing to build duplexes on the Privilege Road project, which was recently extended. Wetlands permit was extended, I believe, in December or January. And they're probably going to be finishing up sometime in the summer of 2021, I believe. The apartments project at 470 Cottage Grove Road is moving along. They're going to be opening in the spring as well, probably in April. So things are moving. And after the minutes, actually maybe before the minutes, we have a 2-member shortage, or there's 2 vacancies on the Wetlands Commission. And if you guys know of anyone that would like to possibly join the Wetlands Commission, please send me their information or send them my information, and we can get the process started where the wetlands agent, in my case, commission can make a recommendation, but I have to submit the information to the town clerk. She makes recommendations to the committee on committees, and then they have to be approved by the town council. So it's not
oh, sorry, Peter. Did you ever reach out to the person that I told you about?
I don't really remember. David. Okay, I don't think so.
Okay,
but that's maybe I got to go back and look if you sent me something. But we do have, I think we have one vacancy from the Democratic side and one from the Republican side. Although I know that there's a couple of non or independent registrars on the commission now, so maybe that doesn't make any difference. But we do need more people.
Yeah. Peter, I think you do have to talk to the party chairman.
Yeah.
Usually it's initiated by the party chairman to the town clerk from the committee. There's a whole interaction there.
Yeah. You're absolutely right, Barry. I forgot about that step. it has to go through that phase of it, I guess. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was the minutes. And I wanted everybody to understand that the draft minutes that I get from Joyce Pickett are really just the rough outline of what I submit to you guys as the draft minutes that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. And so if there are concerns about the substance of the minutes, we can address those in the discussion of the approval. But I think the spelling mistakes and stuff like that, maybe it would be better if they could be submitted to Joyce and myself in writing rather than at the meeting.
That's a good idea.
It's not a big deal, but the minutes that you guys see are really quite, in some cases, they might be quite a bit different than the ones that Joyce sends to me. So what I try to do is to make sure that, number one, all the motions are there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the most important thing. But then also give hopefully a brief synopsis of the discussion. So if there's a substantive difference in the minutes, then we should talk about that when the time comes. And maybe for not this meeting, but maybe for the next meeting, if you guys could submit the typographical errors to me and to Joyce, and I think that would be a better way of doing it than going through every line at the meeting. That won't happen for this meeting, but I think for the next one, that I would like to try to do that so that we have those corrections maybe in time for a second submittal by me, perhaps by email with those typographical changes made already. I think it would be certainly easier than going through everyone in the meeting, and of course we're on YouTube too, so
Exactly.
it comes across sometimes, I think, as not very professional, perhaps, to read, to go through and find all of those little typographical errors and then discuss them at the meeting.
Agreed.
Okay. So, do we want to talk about the minutes now?
Yeah. So we need a motion to approve them and then we'll discuss them.
Motion to approve the minutes for the necessary corrections.
From Joy. Second.
Second.
By
Second.
Yeah.
I have Joyce making the motion and Barry seconding.
Yeah, that's good.
It's Joy, Joy.
Joy.
Right.
Yes, Joy, I'm sorry.
All right.
Okay.
So any corrections, modifications?
So we're not doing spelling things now, or is that starting next meeting?
That is going to have to start next meeting.
Okay,
you've
then I have two minor ones.
Okay.
On page 2, the second to the last paragraph, second or third line up from the bottom, it says Mr. Manis, and it should be Mr. McManus.
Oh,
Yep.
And
Good
then,
catch.
and then on page 7, the first paragraph after the bold text, fourth line down, the last word on that line should be bought, not brought.
Say it again, David.
The first paragraph after the bold on page 7,
Mhm.
the fourth line down, the last word on that line, it should be bought, not brought.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Peter?
I'm listening.
Okay. There's one other Mr. Manis that David missed, and that would be 5 paragraphs up from the second, 5 paragraphs up on page 2. Second line, start of the sentence, Mr. Manis.
Oh, yeah.
Now, one paragraph above that, it starts off, Mr. McManus stated that the had reviewed.
Hmm.
And I'm assuming that means that they had reviewed.
Or he.
Or he, sorry. Pronoun trouble.
Yes.
Okay, now go down 2 more paragraphs. Starts off, Mr. Castaldi stated, okay?
Mhm.
Now, we're looking at the third line up from the bottom of that paragraph. Billy Brook runs more than 800 feet from north to south, and there are floodplain wetlands across flat of the floodplain.
There should be a the in there across the flat
Okay,
of the floodplain, or I could just say across the floodplain, I suppose. Which
don't
would you
need-
prefer?
either. I'm not going to be that picky anymore.
Okay, I think I'd like to put insert there that there are floodplain wetlands across the flat of the floodplain.
Now, I think, Peter, you should take away from all this that we actually read these.
Yes. Okay.
I got one correction. First page, last paragraph, David Barham with offices at 3 Regency. He moved. It's 1 Regency.
Oh,
Oh,
I missed that.
I wouldn't have known that. Wow.
nobody but Alan would know that.
Well, I'm
Right?
in that building too.
Yeah. To Regency. Okay.
So all in favor of the minutes as amended?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? It's unanimous. Before we adjourn, a couple things. I tried to keep them to a limited time. I don't know, what's your opinion? Did that work or was it a wasted effort?
I think it worked because really, like you said, they pretty much stuck to it. We just kept talking afterwards.
Well,
So,
if we're talking, I think it's fine.
oh, I think so too, but it's
But-
nice to not go till midnight, so.
Right.
You know, I think sometimes they answer and they don't listen to understand our questions and respond specifically to that. They go on and on and on, and I just wish the applicants or the engineers or whoever it is would just stay
Be more
specific.
concise.
Yeah, be more. I know you're trying to make a pitch and you're trying for us to approve something, but sometimes less is more. Just be precise and be concise of what we're asking.
Well, that,
Yes.
I try to throw in everything. Well, that's why they bring in everything from the past.
Yeah, that guy on the phone certainly proved that.
Oh,
Now,
we're doing it in the 30s. Oh, come on.
so you may want to amend.
It's me.
You may want to amend how you say that. You may want to say, we're going to cap you at 1 hour, but we'd appreciate it if you do it in less time.
Right. In 20 minutes.
Yes.
Or make your answers to our questions as concise as possible.
That's a good
I
idea.
like that.
You people haven't dealt with David Barham long enough.
Right. You give him a microphone and he's going to go right through everything.
Well, you know what? The other thing too, I think the other thing, Alan, I think someone mentioned it. Maybe we give each speaker 10 or 15 minutes.
I
Because
think that,
when you,
sorry, but I think that Jose would like to point out that we're still being recorded.
Yeah, I know that. And
Oh, that's fine.
And I'm keeping it recording because the last time we got in trouble because.
This is transparency.
Yeah,
Transparency.
I want us to be recorded. I want us to be a public.
Right.
I want this for the public. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
we you know, I mean, a lot of volunteer time, but we also want to be more precise and effective.
Yeah, and I understand how they're answering because I testify in court, and questions that I can answer with one word, I sometimes on cross will talk for 5 minutes because I want to get in all the things I missed on the other questions. You know, so I
And,
understand where they're coming from. You just got to try to keep them north to a narrow answer. Precise.
One point of clarification for Peter is that though there is the two chairs would send in candidates for the wetlands for both Republican and Democratic parties. I believe the committee also will take applications from you, Peter, if they are from an independent.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the committees are supposed to pick the best candidate. It doesn't matter of party affiliation, even though generally it is. So if we
Right.
have independents in the town or no parties affiliation, they should also, because they commissioners too, provided they have the experience. I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay.
Yeah, if we get good people, I don't care where they're from.
Yeah, I will try to find that email that I sent you, Peter. It was a few months ago, about the person that I was talking about. I'll try to find that and resend it to you.
Okay.
Jose, you know, I had a problem with the Zoom. At one point, it wouldn't let me bring people in. Is there a maximum that can come in as a participants?
No, there shouldn't be.
Okay. After a while,
I think at one point, when I got off my other meeting, I put on from my other computer, and I think that made me 2 hosts, and that might have kicked you off being a host.
Oh.
I heard about that too.
I was on twice, so it said, well, you're on twice, you must want to be the host and co-host since you're in charge. I couldn't make you co-host again, so I just signed off my other computer, and
oh, that's what happened.
you know, which is a better computer than the one I'm using now.
Yeah. Well, I was having computer problems. I had one kept freezing, and I kept
I didn't want to end this meeting. I didn't want to leave it from this computer because I might have ended the meeting, because that's where I started it from.
All right.
So
Peter,
that's what happened there. I'll realize that next time and start it from somewhere else.
Peter,
Well, hopefully there's not another next time. I can't be doing these 2 meetings at once.
Well, next time we're on Monday.
That's it's scrambling my brain sometimes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Peter, one last thing. I do, as you know, I travel a lot for work, and I sometimes don't have the plans with me. And I tonight I didn't, but I was able to follow along. Is it anywhere I know there are pretty large scans if you had to do PDFs, but is there anywhere we can do PDFs versus hard copy? I mean, we could save a lot of printing there too. But is there any way we can do PDFs on an FTP site that we can grab it from the town website or somewhere that we don't have to keep printing out all this or having all this hard copies in front of us?
Yes, we post the plans, the applications, the drainage studies, all of that stuff.
Let me show you.
On the
Town website.
Wetlands Commission's webpage, under pending applications.
Yeah, let me show you where if I can in a second.
Because if it's there, please you don't have to send me hard copies. I would prefer to use the digital copies.
So here, do you see the wetlands page there?
Yeah.
Yep.
So right here, pending applications. You click on that, and in about 20 minutes after it reloads, every single application has everything that Peter sends out in the packet. So application for Copper Cross has the application, owner's authorization letter, narrative, master plan, map amendment, soils report, supplemental. So you can see you click on the plan, you should see the plan. If like I said, my computer's slow. So, and then you can, so everything that you would normally get in your, whatever's on the record, probably got more stuff than you actually get in your packet in there. For every single application, it has the data meeting, any staff, up to the staff. As I get stuff, we Peter scans it in. And then I post it.
Great.
All right.
It's so much
You know where
easier,
to go.
especially if you've got two monitors and you can pull
Yeah.
things up onto your big monitor and just use your laptop for the Zoom.
Yep. So
Right.
that's where you find it.
Okay,
Perfect.
would anybody else prefer not to get the paper maps?
Or
I will continue to get the paper documents because the two computers that I have at home are work related. And I do so much reading on them and I'm not allowed to put anything more. And I don't want to get a third personal computer. So I would rather just continue to mail me.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Good to know.
All right.
Okay, I have a question for Kevin Hussein. Are you still receiving mail on Woodland Avenue?
I actually I put in a change of address. I'm sorry. Did you get a kickback?
I didn't see anything. No, I didn't get anything kicked back, but I want to make sure that I send it to you where you're going to
No.
receive it.
I just sold my house and I just moved into Heirloom Flats. So
Yeah.
I changed my address at the post.
Okay, because I signed you up for that class, I think. Did you get an email?
Yes.
And I
Get
think
an
they'll be,
email for that.
they'll be sending, I put down your home address as Woodland. They'll be sending you the
Right.
material.
I forwarded all my address over to my new address. So
Okay, good. All right.
So, yeah, so Kevin is at, what is it, Hemlock. So when this COVID breaks, we can go sit in the lobby and drink beer.
Yeah.
yes.
Movies in the court. Go watch movies in the courtyard.
Yeah.
Well, before we
big screen.
adjourn, can I just thank Joyce and Peter for all their diligence and attention to detail in the minutes, because it looks like a huge job, and I really appreciate the work.
Thank you.
As I'm sure you guys do too.
I do. I certainly concur with that.
Thank you guys.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
To adjourn.
All in favor?
All right.
Bye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Unanimous. All right. Thank you all. Well, it's 10 o'clock. Got you home by 10 o'clock.